The 49ers have allowed Jimmy Garoppolo to go seek a trade. But is there even a market for him anymore? My special guest thinks there might be an interesting destination. Stay tuned. We're talking about that plus a lot more. Keep it locked here. I forgot to put me in. But what is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. We got a great show for you today. I'm your host, So Real Sunil, and we usually do this on Wednesday, but my guy was out vacationing and doing whatnot, so we switched it to a Friday. But I do have my little brother here, Rohan Chakravarthi. Rohan, how you doing, man?
Ooh, vacation was great. 49ers are great. We've got a couple days before training camp. I'm excited, and that's why definitely excited for this show. It's the first one that we've had in like 2 weeks or so. So yeah, I'm ready to talk shop and definitely ready for the next couple of weeks.
I love it, man. And we're definitely going to be doing a lot of stuff next week during training camp. But before we start on football talk, how are the tea and crumpets? How are the fish and chips?
Oh man, like yeah, it was a good time though. I really enjoyed the Europe trip. Went to a couple different places, and yeah, I mean all three places that I went to, or four places that I went to, were a vibe. So I enjoyed it a lot.
I love it, man. Well, while you were out and about on the streets in Europe, some things did happen. But first, just yesterday, a big deal broke. Kyler Murray went ahead and finally got the extension he was looking for, and it came in pretty major. 5 years, I think, what, 230 million with 160 guaranteed. So, if everything goes well for him, he's averaging about $46.1 million per year. Now, obviously, I guess Arizona must be happy about this, but we care about the 49ers, Rohan. So, one, what did you think about the deal? Two, what are your thoughts about this as regards to how the 49ers should be looking at this?
Yeah, so I mean, this deal is interesting, right? It was inevitable for the not the 49ers. The Cardinals had to pay this type of money to keep Kyler Murray, similar to how the Ravens are probably going to have to pay this type of money to keep their quarterback Lamar Jackson. And so it was inevitable. But obviously, there were two things. I saw Grant point out earlier how the Kyler Murray situation is similar to one of our situations in that Kyler Murray requested a trade earlier this offseason, took off everything from his social media, and now it's an amicable result, right? Where Kyler Murray is saying, I always wanted to be an Arizona Cardinal. He's there till 2027. And then there was the other part. I tweeted about this just a couple of minutes ago. Kyler Murray's contract is structured very interestingly. His cap hit for 2022 is only 12.6 million, and his cap hit for 2023 is only 16 million. Whereas if he was going to be on the franchise tag, it would have been probably upwards of $30 million. So Kyler Murray in this next 2 years, to me, is the Arizona Cardinals window. And if we're being more specific, I think it's 2023. The Cardinals got worse this offseason. They lost two of their top edge rushers in Hassan Reddick and Chandler Jones. They didn't really have an immediate replacement for them, apart from drafting players and developmental players in the second and third round in Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders. Offensively, they got added Marquise Brown, but they lost a portion of their running game with Chase Edmonds being going to Miami. It's not a strong offensive line there that much over there in what do you call it, in Arizona. And so to me, I think they got worse. I think they regressed in a division already competitive. Now, next year, I think, is their window to compete with the cap hit of Murray, with the salary cap expected to rise, and with just the way that this contract is structured out. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, congratulations to Kyler Murray. He's pretty much set for life with this contract, so that's great for him. Yeah, I mean, as far as how it affects the 49ers, clearly that means, you're going to be seeing Kyler Murray 2 times a year for the next 5 years minimum, right? And, whether or not that something that bodes well or doesn't bode well really depends on what you're talking about as far as what the Cardinals can actually put around him. I mean, it does look like the Cardinals are sticking with this core, right? They re-signed Cliff Kingsbury. Now they re-signed and extended Kyler Murray. But what are those teams going to look like? You broke it down and said, 2022, 2023 are the years where that contract doesn't balloon up, where, Kyler Murray's taking up a majority of the cap. But are the Cardinals really even making the right personnel decisions to be able to be competitive anyways? Like last year, they looked really good at the beginning of the season. And then, when it came down to crunch time and going into the playoffs, they tend to falter a little bit. And that has to be the hurdle that we have to see, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals be able to do. They seem to be a very one-dimensional team in the sense that the first half of the year, they look very good. Second half of the year, they tend to, not be as dominant as they were earlier. So, one, I think that, DeAndre Hopkins coming back second half of the season might spring a little bit of energy into them for the second half of the year. But I think this really affects the 49ers more, less on the field and more just like, seeing that what the quarterback market is going to look like 3 years from now when Trey comes up, right? Um, Kyler Murray put up ridiculous numbers in his first 3 years as a starter. I think he broke every single record, a lot or a majority of the record as far as what he was able to do in his first 3 years. Obviously, with that type of production, even though you haven't seen that much success per se, it still led to a huge, huge contract. So if I'm Trey Lance and I'm looking at, the trajectory, I'm looking at, okay, well, I could just make sure that I perform at a very high level. And then regardless of success or not, I'm going to get paid. But with the team that the 49ers have around Trey, if he does play well, there is going to be team success along with that, which means we're looking at maybe Trey Lance 3 years from now, if he plays the way we think he is, what, 50 plus million per year. That would probably be the going rate by then, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is just going to exponentially continue to increase. The amount of money that these guys are making is crazy. We saw what Josh Allen get 258 million. We've seen Mahomes with the $500 million contract. We've now seen Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, and there are going to just be more names to come and come and come. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think the only team that probably the team that probably cringed the most when this came out is the Ravens, because now they have to negotiate with their guy, and I don't expect Lamar to go any less than what Kyler got, because he's actually taken the team to the playoffs multiple times and had more success there. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's not 49er news, but whenever you see a big contract like that, it's nice to hear your thoughts. But that's not to say there wasn't quarterback news with the 49ers. A few days ago, Rohan, the 49ers did allow Jimmy and his team to go out and seek a trade. Before we get into what you think might happen with this, what do you make of this with the 49ers now putting it into the hands of Jimmy and his team to actually figure out the trade, and what do you think that means for the situation overall?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this Jimmy Garoppolo situation for a while, right? And I'm not talking about the seeking the trade part. We knew that Jimmy Garoppolo has been seeking a trade, and the 49ers have allowed it since March. Matt Mayoko reposted one of his articles from March 31st, where John Lynch specifically said in a press conference that we have allowed permission for Jimmy Garoppolo to seek it. This was only the official permission, which essentially is a way of saying Jimmy Garoppolo will not be on the team in 2022. Now, the way that talk about it, I talked about this with Wayne earlier today. Right now, Jimmy Garoppolo is essentially a free agent. What do I mean by that? He has a non guaranteed contract and he's free to talk with other teams on a rework deal. This is essentially free agent negotiations. Him and his camp talking with other teams trying to settle on a number ahead of training camp or whenever he gets traded. And then once that happens, it turns into a sign and trade like in the NBA because once you have the rework contract, the team sends something over. Now, I'll talk. I'll give you the floor here in a minute. There are 5 teams, according to Cam Marino, a reporter, I believe, for the Atlanta Falcons, who have inquired about Jimmy Garoppolo. The Miami Dolphins, the Houston Texans, the Seattle Seahawks, the what are the last 2? The Detroit Lions, and I am forgetting the last one, but it's
Maybe Cleveland,
not Cleveland. He said,
the
"Oh, in the Atlanta,
Giants,
in the Atlanta."
Falcons.
There we go. So
Okay.
those are the 5 teams. What do you take away about that?
Well, before we get into that, because we're definitely going to get into what we think may happen, I did find it. I mean, this basically to me was like the 49ers saying that not only that Trey is going to be the starter, but more importantly, that now I think Jimmy is healthy enough to where we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because it was like, to have this type of news, kind of, I was confused because I was like, I thought this was already what we expected, or what we thought was happening this whole offseason. But I guess now it's more about Jimmy is ready. He's healthy because this came off of the back of that weird day where Colin Cowherd and Ian Rappaport both came out with really glowing stories about Jimmy Garoppolo. Like Colin Cowherd was talking about how Jimmy Garoppolo is the most underrated player in the NFL at this moment. Ian Rappaport was speaking about how the 49ers are ecstatic about Jimmy Garoppolo's recovery and how his arm is going to be her rotator cuff should be even stronger than it was pre-surgery, and how, they're waiting for him to throw multiple balls down, multiple 40-yard passes before they actually bring him into camp and all this kind of stuff, which is like, what? Like, when has Jimmy ever thrown multiple 40-yard passes? Like, that's not part of his game. So it just seems like now it's the last ditch effort. And to me personally, Rohan, I find it hard to believe that there is actually a trade partner out there. Namely because one, the contract that they have to come back with. But that is interesting that you're talking about maybe if they rework a contract, that would be something that another team might be interested in. But before we get into the options, can you explain a little bit about how a rework contract would affect the 49ers and why a team would actually send draft capital to the 49ers on this type of deal?
Yeah, definitely. So this weekend, or I mean, not this weekend, just a couple of days ago, when I tweeted out the 5 teams that were inquiring about Jimmy Garoppolo, many were confused because a lot of those teams don't have the cap space necessary to take on his money. And a lot of the people were like, are the 49ers going to eat money? Because they shouldn't, right? Because they can easily cut him. I don't think either of those are true. The 49ers will not eat money in this deal, nor will teams take on the entirety of Garoppolo's contract. So a rework contract, how that works is you saw it with Baker Mayfield, except that contract was guaranteed. Somehow you had to reach the 18 million parameter. But instead, Jimmy Garoppolo is essentially going to take a pay cut to play for another team in the range likely of $10 to $15 million, maybe even lower with an incentive-based deal for salary cap purposes. So whatever the contract parameters will be, it will be so that teams can fit it under the salary cap. And I use that number because most of the teams that have inquired have around that cap space and range. Specifically, the Miami Dolphins have around $16.6 million in salary cap space. That's why I bring up that number. And then what was the second part of your question?
So I guess then the purpose of a team actually giving draft assets to the 49ers would be that he doesn't hit the open market. So they don't have to negotiate against other teams. They just basically get their guy after they talk to Jimmy. So this kind of seems like a good situation for both sides because Jimmy at least gets to, I guess, have some say in what what team he's going to play for next. And the 49ers will get some kind of draft capital versus just cutting him, but they would still be able to save all of that money on the cap and either utilize that somewhere during the season or, roll that into next season.
Yeah, and you're right. This Jimmy Garoppolo is essentially, regardless of how it is, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to choose his next destination. He is going to get the team that he wants to be on, be it via trade or release. Because when you look at it via trade, Jimmy Garoppolo can refuse to negotiate a pay cut with certain teams, making them out of the mix because they can't afford, nor will they want to acquire his services for $27 million. So he essentially can choose which trade partner he wants the most if he wants to be traded to that team. And if he doesn't, he's likely going to grant his release, and the 49ers will probably accommodate that request, making them look even better because guess what? What is the best thing you can do for Jimmy Garoppolo? Letting him go to a place of his choice because he was a franchise icon, and so it's a great PR move. So to me, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get what he wants, and I also think the 49ers are going to look very good in this situation. So when we go back to that, your question on why a team would trade for him, it's because training camp is coming up. This is the first time that teams are going to be implementing their playbooks with pads, and a team should want Jimmy Garoppolo earlier than later. There is the argument that he can be cut. However, if he is cut towards the end of August, the deadline is August 30th. If he is cut towards the end of August, there is only a 12-day period between that time and week one for him to be implemented. In reality, that's not enough time for a quarterback to be acquainted with the offensive scheme, with the offensive players, and with the offensive line. And on top of that, all the entire system has been directed towards a different quarterback for the entirety of training camp. So a team, instead of waiting for Jimmy Garoppolo, will be able to get his services earlier. And what we heard from the Schefter report is that he has been cleared to throw. So he can adapt to the playbook, and he can probably get some training camp time in with his new teammates prior to week one, providing that team with the best chance to win as opposed to what their current options are.
Yeah, so I mean, in a situation where I think neither side, the Jimmy Garoppolo's team and the 49ers, really thought that it would be down to July 22nd and Jimmy Garoppolo would still be on the team. I don't think when the season ended that they thought by July 22nd, 2022, Jimmy Garoppolo would still be on the roster. Obviously, a lot of different things happened to get us to this situation, and that have been well documented by us and multiple other, content creators. But I guess this is like at this point, the best case scenario for both sides. The 49ers can get something for Jimmy. It's probably not going to be much, but Jimmy also has some say in the team that he's looking for. But when we break it down, what are the most likely trade destinations, Rohan? You mentioned 5 teams that have shown some interest. But if I'm Jimmy Garoppolo and Jimmy Garoppolo's team, there's probably a few things that I'm looking for, right, Rohan? I'm looking for maybe compensation, but more importantly, I'm probably looking for a situation where I feel like, one, I can have a chance to start, and two, be in a situation where I have enough talent around me where I can showcase what I'm capable of doing, so that if even the team that I'm at doesn't want to extend me or whatever the case may be, I become more, I guess, enticing for somebody else in the league to go after and maybe get a more security in a deal next off season. So, what do you feel like are the most likely trade destinations? And then maybe we can go off of what might be the actual, what Jimmy might actually be looking for in those teams.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point. Likely trade destinations and realistic trade destinations are different. Why? For Jimmy Garoppolo, this contract or this new team is not only about this new contract won't be just about this year, but it's also going to be about trying to get a next contract and being a starter for future years so that he can be in the best financial position possible. And when we talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, there's one argument, although many view it as flawed, to the reason why teams should acquire Jimmy Garoppolo. He wins. Quarterback wins. 38-16 record, one of the best records for a starting quarterback in the modern era. So that is the main argument that Jimmy Garoppolo presents to teams. When he's on that team, when he's playing, he wins. Obviously, his durability is an issue, but when he's playing, he wins. And so to
Not to
me,
mention, Rohan, not to cut you off, but 4-2 in the playoffs as well.
exactly. And he can probably use the 8-28 record with backups to his advantage. And so to me, I think Jimmy Garoppolo has to go to a situation where he can continue that moniker so that he can get a second contract. And so to me, I think realistic trade destinations have to be a place where Jimmy Garoppolo believes he can carry that team to an above average record, meaning above 500 or 500 record. So that's kind of like the main criteria for me when talking about trade destinations.
So let's maybe go one by one into those 5 options that you talked about, because I know you have some likely ones, or you have like some ideas of what might be a good option for both. But you mentioned 5 teams. Let's keep the one that I know you like the most at the end, right? So let's go. Let's start with Atlanta, right? So Atlanta right now has Marcus Mariota. They don't have. They have a good tight end there. They lost their star receiver for the year due to a weird suspension, right? So there's not much there as far as like the offense. Plus they have a guy, Marcus Mariota, who's played with that coach before. But what would be, I guess, why would Atlanta look at Jimmy and think that he might be a good fit? You're on mute. You're still on. There you go.
Okay. Atlanta, though, let's first talk about the connection. Atlanta this offseason hired executive Ryan Pace to their front office. Ryan Pace, formerly the GM of the Chicago Bears, has ties with Jimmy Garoppolo. Both were of Eastern Illinois University. They're both Chicago natives there. And so they have the connection there. And he actually reportedly has been wanting Jimmy Garoppolo to be traded to the Atlanta Falcons. So there's the connection there between them two and also the interest in bringing Garoppolo to the Falcons. Now, as for why it works, who's Atlanta's head coach? It's Arthur Smith, who operated a system, a run-heavy system in Tennessee, where Ryan Tannehill operated best out of play action, similar to what Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths are. Ryan Tannehill, in my opinion, is a better quarterback. He has better arm strength, but still, I think Jimmy Garoppolo can operate that system efficiently, especially in the intermediate to short range throws. And so it's a run first offense with the play action capability, which Jimmy Garoppolo has proven or has shown on film before. So that's why I think it can work. He is a system fit. Now, is it as likely as others? It might not be, just because of the weapons, but
and what Niner sickness or what Beto talks about too. Obviously, when we've seen Jimmy win, it's also been on the back of a very, very strong defense, good running game, both of which are questionable at Atlanta, to say the least. Okay, so that's kind of Atlanta. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most likely, 1 being not at all, where would you put it on the Rohan meter as far as Jimmy Garoppolo going to Atlanta?
I'd probably put it at a 5. I think it's a little more likely than some of the other destinations, just based on the connection with Ryan Pace. I think that that's important because Jimmy Garoppolo might be able to negotiate a little more cleaner with someone he's more acquainted with. But I also don't think that this is a winning situation. I think the Falcons are also in a pretty hard division right now, right? The Saints return Jameis Winston, one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Buccaneers are one of the best teams in the NFL. And the Carolina Panthers have a pretty strong infrastructure outside of their quarterback. And so now with Baker Mayfield, I think that they also can be somewhat competitive in the 500 range. So to me, that's a hard division. I don't know if that's as enticing to Jimmy Garoppolo, who's trying to, once again, like I said, prove that he can win.
Okay. Next team, let's talk about Detroit. Right, so was Detroit on the list?
Detroit was on the list, yeah.
Okay, so Detroit, obviously Dan Campbell is over there. They already have Jared Goff, another quarterback that very similar, I guess, to Jimmy Garoppolo in the case that he has won at least with the Rams, taken them to a Super Bowl, hasn't been able to get over the hurdle. Went to Detroit, hasn't been winning over there. So, what would be the reason why Detroit would go after a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, and would that make sense for Jimmy?
Yeah. So Niner Sigmas brought up, right? Great D and great run game. And I think Detroit at least has one of those. They've got a strong run game over there with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, who I think I don't know if Jamal Williams is there anymore, but I do believe they signed someone this offseason. And so I think that they have a strong run game there. But more importantly, they've got a strong offensive line. Atlanta lacks that, and Detroit has one of the better offensive lines in the NFL, as surprising as they may sound. They've got Frank Ragnow there. They've got Taylor Decker there, and they've also got Penei Sewell there, who is playing right tackle or left tackle, one of the two, and Pro Bowl guard Jonah Jackson. So they've got a pretty strong offensive line core there. I think that that system works as well. Another run heavy system, which you can rely a little more on your quarterback. And I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff had issues last year with accuracy, and he had drives that stalled a lot last year. And I think right now, I think that situation could be better with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, when we get to your rating meter, I think that it changes just a little bit because there are two factors to me that matter with the situation. One, Jared Goff holds a contract that is north, I think, of 25, $28 million for this year. So are the Lions going to attribute $40 million to quarterbacks for 2022 with average to below average play? I think that that's a question that we don't really know if that's feasible for them or not.
Jimmy G, our boy Waruna jumps in. Jimmy G will be traded to an intangible team since his performances are intangible. That's funny, Waruna. Always love the Jimmy trolls. Wanted to shout out Raphael562 that jumped in. What up, Sunil, Rohan, and everybody. Scar Bartosh, we had you earlier. Didn't shout you out though. Thank you for joining in. And of course, we've already mentioned Beto, who's in. All right, so I mean, the Detroit situation, I guess. What did you give it on the radar? On the radar, you said.
I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a little
So
more
you think
than
it's a little more likely than Atlanta? And I mean, the running game is there. I guess.
yeah.
Obviously, I think
I
DeAndre
think I'll
Swift
give
is
it a
one.
5 as well. I think I'll give it a 5 with
Okay.
Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but if I'm looking at it from Jimmy's perspective, I don't know if they have the receiver core that Jimmy needs to be able to be successful. They do have running backs, and obviously that defense is very suspect as well. So if I'm looking at it from Jimmy's situation, I don't know if that's the best fit for me. If I'm Jimmy Garoppolo, once again, I'm playing in very cold weather in the wintertime. I don't have the strongest arm. I am coming off of a shoulder surgery. Is that a place that would fit to what I'm looking for? And even though that division might not be as strong as the Atlanta division, Green Bay, Minnesota, I think are two teams that are far and away leaps and bounds better than the other two teams in that division, and probably are going to be the two vying for playoff positions out of that division. So we went over Atlanta, we went over Detroit. The next team is the Texans, and this one is very interesting to me, Rohan. And the reason why, before you break it down so eloquently, the reason why I think this could be a option is because I do think that Davis Mills is going to be the starter there, but I do think that Jimmy Garoppolo and, like Waruna said, his intangibles, his leadership abilities, and all that kind of stuff might be a good fit for what Houston is looking for. So they might be interested in Jimmy if he wants to come in and be more of a kind of like a leader, mentor type position for a year while he could really get healthy. But I don't know if that's going to be what Jimmy wants. But why do you feel Texas would be interested, or Houston would be interested in Jimmy? And what would be, I guess, the selling point to Jimmy?
Yeah, so Houston is another one of those young rebuilding teams, similar to the ones that we've mentioned. Houston, their main thing is Brandon Cooks. They've got a top, what these other two teams that we've mentioned don't have. They have a top receiving weapon. I know the Atlanta has Kyle Pitts, but I'm talking receivers strictly. They've got a top receiving weapon in Brandon Cooks, who, despite the quarterback that's there, he's played at a high level throughout the entirety of his career. I think that that is a huge selling point. And they're also revamping their offensive line. They've got Laramie Tunsil. They drafted Kenyon Green this offseason. I still don't think it's a top like an above average offensive line. Still think it's below average, but they're working on that front too. As for defensively, I think they are building a little bit. They've got pieces like Jonathan Grenard. They've got good pieces like that, and they also signed back a couple of pieces as well. Although they did lose Justin Reed this offseason. So to me, it's another one of those teams. But more importantly, when you look at that conference, right? They play with the Jaguars, they play with the Colts, and they play with the Titans. I think that they could try and vie for that third place spot. And I don't know their schedule off the top of my mind, but third place in that division could be around 500, which could help them, or at least could help Jimmy Garoppolo out as he looks for a new job. But main selling point is you have a top receiver in Brandon Cooks who could be implemented like Debo Samuel in a high volume role that gets him a lot of yardage in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, what would you rank this on your meter?
I would actually rank this the lowest. I'd probably say a 3 out of 10. And the reason is what you mentioned. It's Davis Mills. I think that Davis Mills is the answer right now in Houston. And at least I think they ought to give him a shot. You have two ways that 2022 could go. Davis Mills could prove that he is the guy one more time. Or if Davis Mills falters, you have a top pick in 2023 to get one of the top quarterbacks in a pretty strong quarterback draft as of now. So that's how I view the Houston Texans situation. The one caveat to this entire scenario is what happened last year. They had a coach or they just hired Lovie Smith, right? Their former
Right.
defensive coordinator, but they had a coach in David Culley last year who inherited a really, really poor roster and actually increased the win total last year from 3 wins to 4 wins this year, and he was fired. So that just tells us that the NFL is a winning business. You need to win to continue. And Lovie Smith doesn't have much probably I don't think he's going to be the answer there in Houston. He's an old head coach. He's a traditional one, and he's a defensive coordinator turned head coach rather than an offensive line to help the young Davis Mills. So that could be him trading for Jimmy Garoppolo to try and vie for his job. But at the moment, I just think Davis Mills is the better answer for Houston. I think that they're on the right trajectory with Davis Mills, and their answer to what their quarterback will be relies on what Davis Mills does in 2022. So I put this at a 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is out of the three teams we've discussed so far, this is probably the lowest, just because they have a bona fide guy there that can be the future there, who has shown waves of being a decent quarterback in the NFL. So might as well go younger and cheaper with somebody who has a lot of upside like Davis Mills. So I agree with you there. So the fourth team on the list, the Seattle Seahawks, we've talked a little bit about this, but why would the Seahawks be interested? Why would the 49ers be open to this type of trade?
The Seattle Seahawks are interesting, right? I mean, we can obviously talk about the connection, the division rival, right? Jimmy Garoppolo might want to go to a division rival after playing for the 49ers. And we've seen many go from the 49ers to the Seahawks, mainly on the waiver wire, or from the Seahawks to the 49ers, like a Richard Sherman. So there have been instances where it's happened before. Jimmy Garoppolo with the Seahawks, it gives him somewhat of a revenge story or whatever you call it. But with the Seattle Seahawks, they don't have a really strong infrastructure on the offensive line. Might be the worst in football in 2022. But they do have two strong weapons, and DK Metcalf is built like a tank. You've got Tyler Lockett there, although Tyler Lockett might be Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers because Jimmy Garoppolo really can't throw deep. So I don't know how that'll work out. But, you've got two strong receivers there, and that core in itself has been good. You've got a good running game as well. Rashad
Right.
Penny is there. They drafted Kenneth Walker. And if Chris Carson can come back from that neck injury, you've got a really good three-headed trio, although that's unlikely. Still, I think the pieces, except for the offensive line, are strong. But the Seattle Seahawks, like the other teams, are rebuilding right now. Their defense got worse. They lost DJ Reed, one of their top cornerbacks. They've lost Bobby Wagner, one of their top linebackers. And I think that their defense overall is just not that strong. It's probably like right below average defense right now. So I don't think the infrastructure is there, as well as the division. I think they're easily the fourth worst team in that division right now, just given the pieces. And I also think that if they have Jimmy Garoppolo, it takes them away from a top quarterback in 2023, which should be their goal to accelerate this rebuild that they have right now.
Right. I mean, it really boils down to what you just said, Rohan. Are the 49 or not the 49ers, are the Seattle Seahawks looking to really compete this year? Or are they looking to just, stay kind of status quo, get the best draft pick that you could get, and go after one of the 5 top quarterbacks that are supposed to be coming out in this year's draft. To me personally, I don't see the Seahawks really trying to get assets and trade within a division to be able to maybe just put them out of reach for one of those top quarterbacks. So this, once again, I would put kind of low on it. And of the 4 teams that we've mentioned so far, Rohan, none of these teams I would look at as appealing to Jimmy Garoppolo, because if one, none of these guys are really looking at Jimmy Garoppolo or probably going to be giving Jimmy Garoppolo much security moving forward as the starting quarterback there. And none of these teams are really competitive. So is he really going to be marketing himself well with any of these teams? But the 5th team, I know, is a team that you're kind of interested in, that might be a good fit and might be a good trade destination, not only for Jimmy, but also for the 49ers. So talk to me a little bit about this 5th team, which is the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, so the Miami Dolphins are a very interesting team. Miami Dolphins, obviously, the connection is there. Mike McDaniel was hired as their head coach, who operated this Jimmy Garoppolo system for the last 5 years as an assistant under Kyle Shanahan. But the Miami Dolphins, what do they have? They've got the infrastructure. They've got a strong quarterback, strong receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They've got an improving offensive line, signed Teron Armstead to be their left tackle, which might come even more in handy with a right-handed quarterback, because that's the blind side. You signed Connor Williams, who hopefully will play better at center this offseason. And really, that left side of the offensive line for them is strong. The right side isn't so much, although they do have Robert Hunt there. And so that might be more beneficial for Jimmy Garoppolo, a right-handed thrower, as opposed to a left-handed thrower in Tua Tagovailoa. They also have a strong defense, right? They improved that defense. They have Xavier Howard. They have Byron Jones. Pretty strong tandem there. They have a young guy in Javon Holland, some nice pass rushers in Emmanuel Ogbah, who they re-signed, Jalen Phillips, a first-round draft pick from last year. I can go on and on about that team. But really, in all reality, it's, do they want to keep Tua for 2022? They've had so much praise about Tua Tagovailoa, be it McDaniel himself saying, I want to help you get better, or Tyreek Hill saying his absurd comments how Tua has, I forget what it was, more accuracy than Patrick Mahomes, whatever it might have been on that podcast. But
I think it was like throwing a more catchable ball or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But like, they've built a narrative around Tua. Do they remove that before even giving him a shot to play in a single game or start in a single game? That's the question. But I do think that this would be the team that Jimmy Garoppolo welcomes the most. It's in Miami. He can do his off-field activities there. But it's also like the football situation. I think that is beneficial to him, because it will be the Mike McDaniel scheme, which he's mastered, meaning you don't necessarily need a huge transition period, right, to be involved with that group. And also because Mike McDaniel plans to use receivers like Tyreek Hill, potentially in that Deebo Samuel type of role.
Right, and you kind of glossed over. They have a pretty good running game there too, with Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and I think they have a third guy there too that slipped in my mind as well. And to me as well, this could be the most likely scenario, and the reason for it is I really don't see a starting role in the NFL this year for Jimmy Garoppolo, no matter what team he ends up getting traded to, right? Either because these teams aren't necessarily trying to win, or two, they already have somebody that's young there that they want to give the shot to. So if I'm Jimmy Garoppolo and I'm seeing, okay, there isn't like a viable starting job there for me, let me go into a position where, as a backup, if my name does get called due to injury of the starter, I'm going to be in the best situation to really rejuvenate my name and put my name back on the radar for other teams, right? Because what would be an optimal situation for Jimmy? Tua either playing bad or maybe gets injured. Obviously, you don't want to wish that on him, but let's just say that's the scenario. If Jimmy Garoppolo comes in and then they are able to keep winning because they have such a great team around him, right? Similar situation, good running game, decent offensive line, great receivers, really good tight end. plus a very strong defense, and more closer to the 2019 type 49er defense where they're really opportunistic and get a lot of turnovers, which really helps Jimmy Garoppolo with that field position type thing, type game. That's a situation that I would want to play in because I move into that situation, even though I'm not going to be the starter right away. If I ever do get a chance to be on that field, I have the best chance to win out of the 5 teams that we listed, which in my eyes, I want to look the best for the next team that's going to sign me, because most likely any of these teams that he goes to right now, they're not looking at him as the long-term solution. So for me, that's why I think Miami would be the best spot for Jimmy. But what would a trade look like for Miami to get Jimmy? And I know you had some ideas about what that could be like.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about the Miami Dolphins is they have 2 quarterbacks on their roster right now. A lot of people probably forget it, but there is a guy by the name of Teddy Bridgewater who signed a backup deal to be Tua Tagovailoa's backup in 2022. He signed a 1-year, $6.5 million deal, and the entirety of that contract was guaranteed. Now, what I would suggest is potentially moving not Tyreek Hill, potentially moving Jimmy Garoppolo for Teddy Bridgewater. Why? The 49ers get to take off that how much ever million. They'll probably end up saving 20 million in the deal because they'll cut off like about 20, or they'll probably cut off 25 million from Jimmy Garoppolo's contract completely off their books, and then they take on the 6.5 million of Teddy Bridgewater. So that would be a potential trade for me because you have Tua Tagovailoa now as the backup. You also now take Teddy Bridgewater. You have a competent backup who might be a little more adequate for our scheme over here in San Francisco, and have Nate Sudfeld relegate as that third stringer, even though you paid him $2 million for this season.
Yeah, and I mean that I think would be ideal for Miami too, because they did give up a lot of draft capital to get Tyreek. So I don't know how much draft capital they're really looking to offer for a guy like Jimmy, who once again wouldn't be the long-term solution there. But if I am Miami, I am looking at, if for some reason they aren't sold on Tua, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is a good bridge quarterback to whomever they can end up getting in, because we do know they were flirting with Deshaun Watson. They were flirting with some other quarterbacks there. Tua has been in the past benched for guys like Ryan Fitzgerald and stuff like that. So nobody really knows exactly what's going on with how Miami feels about Tua. But I do think that Mike McDaniel might be looking at Jimmy as somebody who might be a little bit of an upgrade for what he's trying to do than a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who's completely new to that system. Scott brings up Jimmy to Tampa Bay. There have been rumors about that. They have, I think, been squashed in the media, at least by unnamed coaches and stuff like that for Tampa Bay. But do you think there's any chance that Jimmy goes to Tampa, Rohan?
No, I really think that this has the least possibility. And I mean, I understand it, right? Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady were in New England together. Now they could potentially Garoppolo could potentially be his successor in Tampa Bay. Jimmy Garoppolo though just doesn't fit a Byron Leftwich system. Byron Leftwich predicates his offense on air yards. Tom Brady has led the league or been near the top of the league in air yards per attempt, and like all the statistics that indicate deep passing. Jimmy Garoppolo has been at the bottom of the league for that, right? That's the reason why, even though he was the number one quarterback in terms of yards per attempt, or number 2 quarterback last year in terms of yards per attempt, he was 24th in air yards per attempt last year, just because he doesn't throw the ball down the field. Instead, he focuses on the intermediate part of the field. And so to me, I think it's a poor system fit. Now, obviously, if Jimmy Garoppolo has that opportunity, that's the one that you go to in a heartbeat, because not only are you the successor to Tom Brady, the infrastructure is built for you. Strong offensive line, strong running game, strong receivers. But to me, I think that might be the least likeliest one. I don't think the Tampa Bay really is interested, despite the rumors that have been put out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll get you out of here on this question, Rohan. So I saw some fantasy draft boards, and Elijah Mitchell was like in the 20s as far as running backs this season. for fantasy. When people are talking about the best running backs in the game, Elijah Mitchell's name isn't really being brought up too much, even though last season, in just 11 games being played, he almost had 1,000 yards. And that's not even the best aspect of him. He averaged, 4.7 yards per carry, but the most ideal or most impressive thing about him, he was one of, I think, three running backs that didn't put the ball on the field at all through the whole season and the postseason as well, Rohan. So this is somebody who, when the ball is in his hands, it is very safe, and you're going to see a lot of production because 4.7 yards per carry is very, very good. However, he's not being discussed much. So do you believe Elijah Mitchell is being overlooked by the national media? And what do you expect from Elijah Mitchell going into this next season?
I don't think Elijah Mitchell is overlooked. I think there's a group of fans that severely underrate him. I also think there's a group of fans that overrate him. And when we're talking specifically for next year, Elijah Mitchell right now, right, amazing season. 207 carries, 963 yards in only 11 games. And of that, he started 10. But it's essentially 11 games, 87.5 yards per game. I don't think that he's going to replicate that production, though, this year, specifically on the yards per carry. Before this year, you don't see 49er running backs running for that many attempts, right? In 2019, the highest attempts was Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert splitting at 137. In 2020, Jeff Wilson had the highest attempts at 126. And then I understand there was one year in the Kyle Shanahan era where a running back eclipsed 200 attempts, but that was before Kyle Shanahan got his own mold on the entirety of the roster. And that was in 2017 when Carlos Hyde was still a part of the roster. He got 240 carries. But since then, when Kyle Shanahan has implemented the running style that he prefers, no running back has gotten over 153 attempts, and that was Matt Breida back in 2018. So to me, I don't think Elijah Mitchell is going to get the attempt number to really reach that amount of yards. I understand that he runs efficiently, right? When you look at it, you said it, no fumbles. In addition, he ran for 2.5 yards after first contact this past year. But there are durability concerns, and despite him putting on 5 pounds, I don't think he can replicate that style of running and play 17 games in a season if he's going to have a sustainable career. So to me, I don't think that. And also, Matt Mayoko came out today saying 49ers are 100%, not 100%, but definitely going to implement a running back by committee approach in 2022. I think that's why Elijah Mitchell is lower on fantasy boards. But to me, what that indicates is Tyrion Davis-Price is going to have a role. Sermon is going to have a role. And really that entire running back group, like in previous years where we've had split carries between several running backs, I think we're going to see more of that this year, which is why I don't think Elijah Mitchell will end up breaking that 1,000-yard marker in 2022. Might be a bit of a hot take, given that he did come very near it in only 10 games. I just don't think he sees nearly the amount of volume that he had in 2021, which was the primary reason why he got injured so much.
Okay, and I think Scott Bartosh agrees with you. Davis-Price is a beast, boys, bigger and faster than Elijah Davis-Price. I don't know about faster, but definitely bigger. But will be
explosive, but I don't know about faster.
Yeah, because even though we didn't get to see it as much, Elijah Mitchell is a 4.3, running back. It's higher 4.3s, but he's running a sub 4.4 40. I want to push back a little bit because I do think Elijah Mitchell is going to have a breakout season this year. And the reason for that is I think there's a lot of things running in his favor. I do agree with you that I don't think he's going to have as many attempts, but to have that much production with missing, a big portion of the season, right? That's what, a third, more than a third, right, of the season. That is amazing. And of all of the running backs, it looks like Kyle Shanahan trusts him the most. So, and we have to mention that a lot of last year he was playing injured, right? He wasn't fully healthy. So why do I think he could still have a big season and go for over 1,000 yards? One is he already was able to have, a 4.7 yard, rushing attempt with a very makeshift offensive line and Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, right? Coming off of injuries in his rookie season. Even though this offensive line may or may not be as good as last year's offensive line, the one addition to this team that is going to affect his ability to rush is Trey Lance, right? Now you're going to see a lot more of the option, which is going to give Elijah Mitchell an extra half second of being able to read a defense to be more explosive. He's coming in healthy. And, in a 17-game season, for him to get 1,000 yards, he only has to average, 58 yards per game. So if he could stay healthy the whole season, do you think it's unreasonable for him to average 60 yards per game?
No, but
Really?
I
Go
do
ahead.
think it's reasonable that he'll stay healthy for the entire season. That's just the way.
Well, I do think that his carries are going to go down. I think he's going to go back to maybe somewhere between 10 to 12 carries per game. But I can see him averaging closer to 5+ yards per carry. So I do think that we're going to see him still break 1,000 with a lower snap count, but still be able to be even more effective because one, you're going to give the ball to somebody that you trust, right? And Elijah Mitchell doesn't fumble. He didn't fumble at all last season. He doesn't fumble. He didn't fumble, I think, his whole college career, Rohan, which is insane, right? So this guy knows how to keep the ball safe. Two, he is the fastest running back on the team. That's just the fact, right? And so if you are looking for explosive plays, most likely, if you're talking about from the running back room, has to be Elijah Mitchell. He's the fastest running back. Well, obviously George Mason, but we don't know if he's going to make the roster or not. And then 3, Trey Lance. I think that those 3 things leads to Elijah Mitchell actually eclipsing what he does throughout the season because I think his injuries were more because of the heavy workload, Rohan, not because he's just an injury-prone type of receiver.
Yeah, and I mean, you do bring up good points. Trey Lance is a huge factor, and I think there's one specific statistic where Elijah Mitchell will get better in 2022. When you look at the breakdown between when Elijah Mitchell was under the gun, meaning under center, or when Elijah Mitchell was in shotgun formation and getting carries, Elijah Mitchell performed way better when he was under center. When there's like the play action kind of appearance from under center, right? And also when there's like when you don't necessarily worry as much about the quarterback's inability to rush. He averaged 5 yards a carry on significant volume. On 156 carries, he averaged 5 yards a carry. In the shotgun is where he struggled a lot more. 51 carries, but only 3.6 yards per carry in those opportunities. And I think with Trey Lance, with the play action threat from shotgun ability, the play action threat is there, but also his rushing ability is there. And I think that is going to cause defenses to kind of stutter a little more, meaning Elijah Mitchell's yards per carry should go up in those situations. However, I just don't think that, like, when we look at it, right, it is a 17-game season, one more than prior years in the Shanahan era. So that might increase the target number from 150 to maybe 175. But even if he has 175 carries, I don't think he's going to exceed 5.5 yards per carry. I just don't. Raheem Mostert did exceed that number, but that's just because he had home run speed. He had the ability to make home run plays. Elijah Mitchell ran a fast 40, but I don't think he has that ability to make home run plays, meaning you're like these 20 plus yard carries, these 30, 50 yard plus carries, taking a 20-yard carry to a touchdown. Raheem Mostert could do that, and I just don't think Elijah Mitchell has that speed to do it. We'll see more now that he's fully healthy, but I think that that's the one distinction that changes, which brings that yards per carry value to around 5, which I think is still exceptional, but I just don't think he gets the volume enough. The 58 yards per carry statistic or per game statistic to reach 1,000, I think that that's fairly fair. But I don't think that Elijah Mitchell just gets 170 or 200 carries to reach that 1,000-yard mark or something like that.
Right. And I agree with you. I don't think he's going to get nearly the same type of run, but I do think he's going to be, because he's not going to be the workhorse, he'll be able to stay healthy. And I think aggregate over the year, he still breaks 1,000. And I personally believe he's going to be the most productive running back out of the backfield for the 49ers.
I can see that. And one thing to clarify with what I just said, I don't think Elijah Mitchell is being overlooked necessarily. I think that there are some parts of his game that people over exaggerate, but I do think that Elijah Mitchell is going to be not way more, but he's going to be more efficient in 2022, which is hard to say given how well he performed in 2021. I think with Trey Lance in there, with him being fully healthy, and with that workload decreasing, I think he's going to be more efficient.
Absolutely. And Scott, thank you for jumping back in with the stats. You are right. Elijah runs a 4.35 and Davis Price is about a 4.45. Good call on the speed. Appreciate you, bringing up the stats and bringing that up. But you were right. I think, Ty Davis Price is definitely bigger and stronger, but Elijah does have the speed, which is going to be a good, a good, I guess, duo now because you do have a bruiser and TDP. And then you still have, the speed. Hopefully, Elijah could bring the speed to be able to do that. And Sergeant Bubbly, nice name. Thank you for joining in. It's going to be Jordan Mason who takes over this year. Look, you came to the right show if you're talking about Jordan Mason because both myself and Rohan do want him to be to make the roster because of his speed and we hope training camp is going to be there. Go ahead, Rohan. Sorry, I cut you off.
Because of his receiving ability too, I'm going to be very excited to. I'll have a good eye on him when I get to see out there.
Absolutely. So nice little segue, Rohan. I like where your mind is going. So that's it for this show. But guys, for those of you that have stuck around so far, do want to let you guys know one. Me and Rohan are going to be on his channel sometime this weekend. I don't know if we're doing Saturday, Sunday, but we will be posting that on Twitter. So stay tuned for that. But next week, Rohan is actually going to be out there for training camp. So me and him are going to be working very, very closely next week. Might even see us streaming every single day just to get what Rohan sees with his own eyes out there. Because I'm very excited about training camp, Rohan. There's so many battles that I'm interested in seeing how they play out. Obviously, we want to see how that offensive line comes together. So, Rohan, talk a little bit about your schedule next week and, what we can expect from you.
Yeah, so like you said, we'll probably go live sometime this weekend. We'll figure out which day and let you guys know. I've got a show with Marco Martinez later tonight. Be sure to tune into that. The first 49ers Red Zone podcast in about 2 weeks as well. So that is definitely going to be fun. This upcoming week will definitely be interesting. We'll do some pre-training camp analysis, give a bit of a deeper dive into the Garoppolo situation, but more importantly, into the training camp battles that Sunil alluded to. And then I will be posting content, obviously, throughout training camp. When I see it, I'll have my coverage report. I will be sharing the details with you guys, both on 49ers Web Zone, so make sure you check out the articles because that's where the information will go first, but also live on stream so you guys can hear everything. And be sure to check me out on Twitter at Rohan Chakravarthi. I'll be posting clips there. I'll be posting all the different kind of information there, but I'll also be probably hosting spaces or being in spaces a good amount. So be sure to check me out on there as well.
And we know what Ryan's biggest who he wants to see the most, Poe, because he thinks Poe is going to play every single position on the offense, maybe even come back and be a defensive lineman as well, according to Ryan. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in this Friday. It's been a really great show. Thanks once again to Rohan. You'll be seeing a lot of us Indian faces all next week and into this weekend as well. Like I always say, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we will definitely see you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't liked and subscribed to Rohan's video, it is in the description. This is absolutely a free way to support Rohan. He does a lot of great work. So please, please, please take a second. It takes less than 5 seconds to go over there, click it, and subscribe over there. If you haven't liked and subscribed this video or my channel, please do that. We are pushing for 1,000 before the season starts. We're a little under 90 away to get there. Thank you once again. Have a great night, and we'll talk again very, very